About a month ago, my father asked me about this recent phenomenon of fake news. And the very first words out of my mouth were, "It's more complicated than you think." After all, that seems kind of obvious when you stop and think about it. After all, a lot of us have seen people spreading these very strange, clearly false stories on Facebook or at the water cooler, and these are oftentimes people that we otherwise think are rather intelligent, people whose expertise we rely upon. So there's clearly something funny going on here, and when you break it down, the issue is not really one of news or stories or even really facts. It is one of psychology. What is it that causes these people to believe and disseminate these bad ideas, and what is it that makes them change their mind? Or more appropriately, what does not? Intuitively, a lot of us seem to think that this is simply an issue of education. When someone spreads bad ideas, it's because they've been misinformed. And if only we could give them the proper info, then, as if remedied by a soothing balm, all those bad ideas would just fade away. Well, if that makes sense to you, then it's more complicated than you think.
Bless us, O Lord, for these thy gifts, which we are about to receive. Amen.
I'm going to start this by going into the issue of climate change, not in too much detail, because to a lot of liberals, this one seems kind of obvious. When someone doesn't believe that climate change is real, well, it's just because they don't have the info. If they had access to the facts, the overwhelming scientific data, consensus among the experts, well, they would just believe. It's obvious. Well, let's test that. In 2016, Pew Research did a poll in which they gauged people's beliefs on climate change, as well as a number of other factors. So the question is, if we wanted to make a prediction about what someone believes about climate change, could we go to that person's scientific knowledge and then make an accurate assessment? Is that a good predictor? And the truth is, it's not. If you actually want to find out what someone believes about climate change, don't look into what knowledge they have. Don't look into what info they have access to. Instead, look into how they vote. This is simply a political issue in the public sphere. If you're a liberal, you likely believe that climate change is real. If you're a conservative, you likely believe it's false. And these political viewpoints serve as a lens through which the facts are assessed. In other words, what a conservative does know about climate change will feed into the narrative that climate change scientists are being paid off or conspiring or whatever. As the Pew Forum said in their report, it could be the case that people's political orientations are an anchoring point for applying their knowledge, rather than the other way around. Now, shouldn't we be acquiring the facts and then forming our beliefs? It's kind of disconcerting. Now, some people might hear this and say, well, this is like a really contentious political issue. It seems likely that people have very strong emotional attachments to these ideas, so we can't really say that it's going to work that way for other issues where people don't have emotional attachments. So here's a fun question. Can we modify someone's behavior in drastic defiance of facts to which they have no emotional attachment whatsoever? Religious, political, you name it. The fact is we can, and it's actually not that difficult. In the 1950s, a series of tests were run that have now become known as the Asch conformity experiments. Imagine this. You have a test administrator at the front of a classroom and 8 students in a row in front of them. The test administrator has a poster board with a line and 3 other lines to the side of it, labeled A, B, and C. And the test administrator is simply going to ask, of lines A, B, and C, which one most closely matches the first? Which one is closest in length? Now, this is not an optical illusion. This is an issue where there is a very clear, obvious answer to anyone with functioning eyes. And what the administrator will do is he will go down the line saying, okay, what do you think the answer is? Okay, what do you think it is? And what do you think it is? And so on and so on and so on. Afterwards, he'll turn over another poster containing another set of lines, and the experiment is repeated. Now, at this point, the obvious question is, well, why would someone bother testing something so overwhelmingly obvious? And here's the twist. Everybody is in on the experiment, except for one person, the very last person in line. All the other people are actors. And periodically, throughout this test, the actors will give the same false answer. Even though the answer is clearly wrong, they're going to give the wrong answer. And the test is really to see what that last person in line will do when everyone else is sharing false info. If you had to guess, how many people would fail at least one of these critical trials? In other words, how many people will spread false information solely because everybody else around them is doing the same thing at least once out of 12 tries? And the answer is 75%. Think about that. Think about how many times you share something on Facebook over the course of, say, a week. Might you be sharing something false just because everybody else is sharing it? There's a decent chance you would. If all of this seems concerning, well, there's good news. There are ways of modifying people's behavior. The problem is it's just a little bit tricky. In the year 2007, in a San Diego neighborhood, a test was run in which door hangers were left on people's doors, informing them that the summer is coming and that they can save energy by switching from the air conditioner to their fan. Each of these door hangers had a slightly different message. In some of them, there was an appeal to the individual's sense of environmentalism. In other words, switch to your fan because it's good for the environment. In others, people were reminded that they could save money. And in others, people were reminded that this would be good for the future generations to come. Now, these are the things that we hear all the time with environmental concerns. So what was the impact? Basically nothing at all. Didn't work. But there was one version of the door hanger that actually did work. Switch to your fan because the majority of the people in your neighborhood are saving energy. Do it because everybody else around you is doing it. This one worked. With these door hangers, the household saved an average of about 10%. And if that seems low, trust me, when it comes to saving energy, getting people to save 10% over a hot summer is a huge number. Also, remember that conformity experiment I was telling you about a minute ago? There have been many iterations of that test run with slight variations. In one of them, there was a designated truth teller in the middle of the lineup. In other words, this person was an actor, but was specifically instructed to always give the correct answer no matter what. So there would be essentially a voice of dissent against the rest of the group, even though they were telling the wrong thing. He's going to tell the right answer no matter what. So how did the person being tested react when there was a designated truth teller? Well, they gave the right answer more often. The mere single voice of dissent actually made people behave more in line with the truth. So there's something to be said about our role in these conversations, about our ability to tell the truth no matter what other people are doing around us, and how we can hopefully prevent ourselves from conforming in spite of the facts. Now, what is the best way to approach this? Well, I don't really know. It's a complicated issue, which is why I want this conversation to get started, open up the commentary, and let you guys help me out with this one, because no matter what I think about the solution, in all likelihood, it is more complicated than I think. Thank you for listening.